Hey folks, this is Alex. I'm the drummer of Gösta Berlings Saga. You're listening to Progcast, and you're loving it.
Welcome back to the Progcast. This is episode 66 already. And in the last weeks, we had our mid-year roundup, for example, with the return of Rune. I hope you listened to that because it was full of amazing music that was released in 2020 already. And then we had the great John Mitchell from Frost, Arena, It Bites, Kino, and of course Lonely Robot. That was a very, very fun chat. So go back and listen if you haven't already. And as you heard in the intro already at the very beginning, today we are back in Sweden with Alex from Gösta Berlings Saga. Hi Alex, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thank you. It's very sunny in Munich. But we're in the Moonbase studio in the basement. But it's not a trap down here.
All right. Yeah. Good to hear. It feels like all bands have to reside in basements of some sort.
Yeah.
Right. Anything music related has to go into a basement.
Yeah. Also, a lot of actually that reminds me of a running gag and a joke in the German prog rock Facebook group Prog Rock DT for Deutschland, and the running joke is that like all the proggers they spend their summers and every free time in their basement listening to prog.
Yeah. It's funny because it's true. It's true. Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of which, we like to start our interviews actually with a little section that we call "What's in Your Walkman." That means, we're checking what our guests have been listening to lately. Is there anything that stood out that you were particularly fond of listening in the last days or weeks? Any particular songs or albums?
That's a good question. I actually have to pull up my Spotify account really to figure it out. But recently I've been amazed by the amazing Facebook group called Crap 80s Metal Art. In case you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Okay. Where people collect like the crappiest artwork for any metal albums made in the 80s, and I got a lot of inspiration. So recently I've been listening a lot to death and thrash metal, like Razor, Canadian band Razor is a really, really good thrash metal band. And so that's probably what I've been listening to the most recently.
Razor. Any particular song that stood out for you?
Well, both in terms of the artwork as well as for the actually really, really good songs is an album called Shotgun Justice. It's like the most amazing thrash metal you can think of. It's just check it out. It's super. It's you wouldn't believe that when you see the cover art, but it's really, really good. And there is actually. Fun fact, there is a song on that album called The Pugilist. I'm not sure if that's even the right pronunciation of that word, but I was heavily into that song maybe like half a year ago. And then for some weird reason, one of the other guys in our band suggested the same track name for one of our songs for the new album without like having even listened to Razor, I think. So that was like a sign from above or from below, depending on how you see it, that we should go for that one.
Yeah. I immediately I recognized the title when you said it because I had the album for a couple of days. I've been listening to it for a bit, and that's one of the songs on there. We're gonna talk about the new album later, definitely. First, I also want to give our listeners a quick rundown of my Walkman. I've been on a little bit of a jazzy streak there, and the reason for that was the amazing debut single of India's Groovy Noodles called Freedom, and it's a 5-minute masterpiece. It's an amazing track with a bass solo, with a sitar solo, and the ending bit is just like full-on Carnatic awesomeness. So I've been listening to that song a lot, and from France, actually, a recommendation of my friend Rune in our best of 2020 so far, that we put out 2 episodes back, and it's a band called Ekphrasis. They are also playing a very, very fusiony, jazzy kind of prog metal, but they do have vocals, and they had their last album, Weird Interbreeding. They released it in May, on May 15th. And yeah, also very, very good. Highly recommended. And last but not least, I also wanted to put some Swedish prog rock. We've been talking a lot about Vulkan already on the show in this year. And also we had Johan Norbeck, the drummer from Vulkan, on the show a couple of episodes back. And he actually mentioned Gösta Berlings Saga and said, you guys are great, so it's cool to have you on the show today. But I wanted to plug my favorite Swedish prog rock band, and that is Paatos from Stockholm. And I wanted to put their very first song on their debut album, Sensor, because I love it. It has a jazzy beginning, but then goes on a complete prog rock tangent. Awesome stuff, and I'm super excited that they're back after a couple of years of kind of hiatus, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some new stuff from them. Anyway, that was our What's in Our Walkman section, and now we want to hear everything about Gösta Berlings Saga, of course. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners haven't heard of you guys yet. Actually, I remember the name for quite a long time, I think, and I also remember the cover from your second album from 2009. We had that on the Proglos radio, where I was listening back then a lot, but I never really took the time to listen to the music until now. So maybe you want to give our listeners a quick overview of how the band developed, what the meaning of the name of the band is, and a quick overview of the history of Gösta Berlings Saga.
Right. Thanks. I'm gonna try to do this in a condensed way. I have a tendency to just talk too much sometimes, but basically we started out almost 20 years ago. And we started out as a duo, just playing organ and drums. And then we gradually added people and good friends to the band, since we felt like our vision of what we wanted to do was a bit limited by the number of hands and brains in the band. And then I think it took us a few years until we became a 4-piece. And we had, bass guitar and electric guitar as well added to that, and it wasn't really until that point where we felt like we had something going on that we could relate to, even ourselves, and that was sort of when we decided to try to form a proper band instead of just playing music and enjoying that, which still should be one of the most important things for any band, I think. But when we tried to come up with a band name, I remember thinking like it would be super if we could have a name such as Gösta Berlings Saga, which is one of the most famous novels in Sweden. It's written by Selma Lagerlöf, who is in Sweden very well-known author. And then the more I thought of it, was like but okay, since I seem to enjoy the sounding of that name, why don't we just take it and make it ours? And if we get any good PR because of people wanting to sue us, maybe that could be a good thing after all, as well. So we just went with that, and to be honest, we didn't have too many. There wasn't too much thinking behind the name in the very beginning, although it sounded very Swedish. It had this, nature-esque feeling to it for us, with like cold winter nights, etc. But I think one of the most rewarding things about picking that name was that after a few years, we started getting emails from other parts of the world, from people saying like, I discovered your music, I love it, and I actually managed to get a copy of the book in my own language, and I've read it now, and I can sort of understand where you're coming from, which I think was super exciting. And I feel like in the case we would ever get sued by a publishing company, I think that would be our one way of trying to save ourselves, just saying that we've actually spread the word of this book, this novel, around the world. So yeah, and I think that was like briefly about the very beginning of this band. Later on, we've always tried to explore what we want to do and the things, this kind of sounds that makes us intrigued and curious. And we're trying to have fun. That's in companies you set KPIs, key performance indicators, and we have one for our band, and that's fun. If it's not fun, we're not doing it, and that goes still for anything that we do. We need to have fun. We actively avoid things that could be good for us in a commercial sense, but if it's not fun, we're not doing it anyway. So we try to figure out what kind of music do we want to play, what makes our bellies feel good when we play it.
That's a pretty straightforward philosophy, I would say.
Yeah, and it has worked since we're still doing this after 20 years, and we have a very collective approach to everything that we do. We don't, we avoid having our individual names on the credits. For instance, everything that is being taken to the band and dissected and brought back together again by the band is owned by the band. We do everything together, regardless of if it's artwork or riffs. It becomes the band's property, sort of, and that's because we are doing this together to have fun. That's basically the main idea behind everything that we do. Yeah, and I think that someone said very early on that we have a pretty unique sound. Maybe that's true, but to be honest, it's kind of hard to find any references that we feel like we sound particularly much like. We mix everything into our big cauldron of sounds, and sort of what comes out at the end is probably something that you could say sounds much like us. Yeah.
After listening to a lot of Gösta Berlings Saga the last days, I kind of came to the conclusion that sometimes I had the feeling it's like a bastard, like a jamrock bastard child of Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk.
Wow. Yeah, that's very flattering. Two of my favorite bands. Yes, that you're making me happy now.
Okay,
thank you very much. It's like, yeah, I don't know what to say really, but yes, I would. That's a perfect thing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's instrumental, and yeah, your compositions mostly or often drive on a like variations of a theme, like slightly changing nuances of a theme, and not like crazy breaks or anything.
Right. Yeah. that's something that we, and I'm happy that we all seem to share. That feeling in the band is that we all think that you don't need to put in a lot of crazy stuff to make it interesting. On the opposite, it's actually what can become interesting. It is what you discover in a song once you've had a lot of these repetitions. And I really like monotonous music myself. Some of my favorite tracks are 30 minutes long and not much happens really. But after 8 minutes and after 15 minutes, you start to discover some parts of it that you didn't hear in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And that's for instance, I listen a lot to techno music, which is based on the same principle really. It's the same super minimalistic drive behind it, and you start to hear these nuances that you didn't in the beginning. And I think it's I shouldn't go too deep into this, but it's very tribal-esque,
Definitely a quality I would put onto the Gösta Berlings Saga sound. Would also be the tribal aspect of the sound, of the rhythms.
Yeah. I mean, some people hate it. Some people even take the effort of commenting, writing negative comments and stuff, which I don't really care much about, to be honest. But I just think the people are different, and luckily, all of us in the band have discovered the beauty of simplistic and minimalistic music, which sort of leaves a lot to the listener instead of giving everything away, telling a story from our point of view. It's like, we're giving you this now, do whatever you want with it. Make it yours.
Yeah, leading up to the new album Konkret Musik, after the 2018 studio album Et X, it was the last studio album and it was the first on Inside Out, I think.
Yep.
But in the meantime, you put out 2 live albums in 2019 and just earlier this year. And yeah, you have a couple of awesome live videos from the latest Artifacts live release with also some cool guests. How did that release come together? And that was kind of that came a bit unexpected, if I remember right, because there was already the first live teaser videos were out, but I didn't have any information from Inside Out or from the PR company. What's this album gonna be about and anything. So
right. Yeah, in the beginning, we didn't really have a plan for what to do with those recordings and those videos. We sort of just released a bunch of them, and then at some point, either we or Inside Out felt like this is actually some pretty good stuff, and we should do more with this than just put it out on our own YouTube channel, which has very few followers, and then we said okay, the quality of the recording was so good and the videos as well. So we wanted to do something more with it. And I think it's really nice because that was the first time that we played through all of the songs from the Et X album. And it's a very nice document of where we were at that time. With all of the rehearsals leading up to that, trying to pull everything together and just figuring out how to play all of those songs live to start with. That was a studio creation in the beginning, but then we really had to learn how to play it live, which was interesting and challenging and fun.
Yeah, and it gives the songs also the another dimension, the live dimension, definitely. And for example, the saxophone part from Lars Åhlund.
Oh yes,
yes. Our listeners might know him from Soen, of course. He just went crazy at the end there.
Yes, I love it. I still get goosebumps when I listen to that part. The sound of his saxophone is just so deep and almost like breaking up. I love it.
Yeah, awesome. So that was. I mean, in the new digital age, it's quite easy to put out a digital album in a short period of time after the decision. Let's do it. But the new album, it is called Konkret Musik, as we already established, is out on July 24th. And it's gonna be the 6th studio album of Gösta Berlings Saga. And yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this album came together, how you approached it, if there was any differences in the process compared to the previous albums?
Yeah, so let's see here. I need to think a little. I think that we basically said, in order to describe how this came together, I think I just need to go back a bit in time and talk about how we got our shit together a few years ago. Everything was super tedious, maybe like 5 years ago. Everything took a lot of time. There were a lot of discussions around anything and everything. And when we released at X, it was like a testament to ourselves that we could actually pull things off without too much hassle. We could, our machinery worked pretty well when we got into it. And that's why we decided to go into the studio and record this new album fairly soon after the release of the previous one. And when we mentioned this to people around us, like that we actually were in the studio recording again, they were like, "But you just released an album. It just came out." And we were like, "Yeah, we know, but we seem to understand how to get things done quickly this time, or since a few years ago." So, and that's just a magnificent feeling, feeling that you have the capacity to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So we went into the studio with a bunch of ideas, and like it says in our biography, the recent one is that we basically just had these skeletons of songs. And what we used to do in the past was to try to pick maybe like 7 songs that were in the same vein to try to create a whole. This time around, instead of trying to find a common thread, we just said, like, let's try to get as much of the good stuff into the album as we possibly can. It doesn't really matter if they don't sound anything like each other. Let's just do it and pull them apart and see what we can do it and make these tunes ours. And that's why the new album has 12 songs on it. Some are super short, some are a bit longer, but we don't really have any prog rock, epics on it this time, which felt like a bit of a relief as well, because we proved to ourselves that we can actually feel happy about what we do, even though we don't have to aim for the stars in terms of track lengths, really. And that's not really, it was a bit of an experiment. But we got this stuff done not super quickly, but efficiently. And we learned so much about our process and how we can discuss around things and try to agree on what to do, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've probably heard since you've been listening to this, it is pretty varied, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first single people might have already heard was Basement Traps. Actually, I was referring to that song, of course, at the very beginning of this episode. I made this little joke.
Got it. I got it.
And it's speaking of track length, it's not even 3 minutes long, but it feels like a complete track, and it's very, very Kraftwerk like.
It is
with a simple melody, and you also have a video for that, and I thought it was quite cool like the band in the lab environment being tested and probed.
Yeah.
And it was a nice touch to it that you dedicated this to the medical workers who are doing a great job. And that was cool. But then the other for the title track, the other music video was totally different.
Yes.
How did you come up with this idea? And
both in sound and visuals, yes. I think so. The first one was a collaboration where the idea came from the director and the guy who made the video, called Martin Gustafsson, super great guy. The second one was more of a band idea. We were discussing this internally. What would be a fun way to present a fairly monotonous and hard pumping instrumental track? And we said, like, it would be great if we could make it into a karaoke video, because it just doesn't make any sense. But it's still, also, since we have this, people, I don't think that people should expect exactly. People shouldn't expect what we're up to, or hopefully they can't. So we thought that maybe if someone was watching this video, they thought that at some point the guy in the video actually would start singing, but then he never really does that. So I think it was a different thing, more of a band collaboration on that one, and we. Of course, with the input of the Carl, a guy who filmed this for us. So it turned out. I think it turned out well. And again, it's varied. We like to sort of go into a lot of different directions, and maybe that's why we're still a bit underground, I guess, because it's hard for people to understand really what we're up to. We don't have this one sound. But we have a lot of different sounds, and some people might like only the more electronic stuff that we do. I know that people have, playlists on Spotify with only the more electronic tracks that we've done, because that's what they like, and then they don't listen to the rock tracks really. But that's fine. It's like a patchwork of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought with a video for Konkret Musik. It kind of proved that even though the rhythm is quite tricky, it's such a hard rocking track, and it proves that Gösta Berlings Saga is indeed danceable music.
Yeah. And I'm still amazed by people, when we play live, people dance. Some people dance, which makes me just so happy. I think we have a pretty diverse audience as well, to be honest, and that's just lovely to see.
Yeah, and another comparison that came up in my mind yesterday or today, something like that, was that you just mentioned you're still a bit underground. Yeah, I thought, there was another, quite bigger release of an instrumental parenthesis prog band called Long Distance Calling, and their approach is very like they're very perfect. Like their studio sound is very, very perfected, and even though you have the repetitious and minimalist approach, there's still something earthy in the Gösta Berlings Saga sound, I think, that doesn't make it too perfect. Not saying that Long Distance Calling is too perfect, but it's just it's a different approach of sound.
Right, and that's actually something that we are doing on purpose. We like the gritty sound. We like the gritty approach. It's not optimal for a label such as Inside Out, but we do love the punk rock aesthetics and the feeling of stuff not being too perfect, the imperfections. And sometimes when we mess up during takes, we keep the ones that actually aren't too good sounding, just to add some extra grit to that. And because I want people, I mean, there are different views on how you should create music. I think Lemmy said once that, of Motorhead, he said that people don't come to shows to see people who are just like yourselves. They want to see rock stars. That's one way of looking at it, that you should go the extra mile or something to be different from the audience. What I would rather like to think of it is that I want to make music that is relatable to people, that they can feel like maybe something subliminal when they listen to this, a different sense of relationship to the music. So that's, I think, why, or at least why I like the idea of having a bit of grit in the music.
Nice. So my favorite part of the album, I just wanted to mention it here, is actually in the second track, Vinsta Julklocka.
Right. Yeah.
The second part, the where the harmonies just open up, is just pure goosebumps. I really love that when suddenly, there's so much the harmony blooming.
Yeah. I like that. That's actually one of my favorite tracks as well. We didn't pick that for one of the singles though, but for anyone who hasn't heard it yet, hopefully it will be a good surprise or a good experience.
Yeah. Great. To finish off this little episode here, were there any live actions already planned before the whole Corona thing went down? How did it affect you as a band?
Good question. So, well, as for existing plans, we only have, and I'm saying have because you never know where this is, how this is going to go. But we have still, it hasn't been cancelled, a show in Oslo, Norway, in I think October or something. So we'll see how that goes. I think the second thing is that we were sort of planning on booking shows, which never really happened. So that's one way it has affected us. But then the third thing is that, to be honest, we are fortunate enough to have other daytime jobs. So we're not directly affected as individuals by this mess of a pandemic. So we're good in terms of surviving. But I feel a bit sad for people who have put everything into music that are right now grounded by it. And I really hope that, I know that you've done a good job in Germany supporting artists with where I see you sort of nodding, but not quite. But I mean, in Sweden, things haven't been working really well, and I know a lot of people who are, basically have no income, which is sad.
Yeah. Funny thing is, as we're recording this, it's today is Friday, July 10th. So almost 2 weeks before the release of the album, and almost 2 weeks before this episode is gonna be released. But as far as I know, Leprous are playing a show in Oslo tonight. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed if things don't go worse again.
Wow.
I think I would assume that hopefully your appearance, your show will go forward there as well. And of course, we all hope, for the sake of the creative and the music industry and community all around the world, that and for also for everyone, that things will go back to a state where it's possible to do live shows again, to experience live shows again as a fan. And I hope you guys will be able to present this new album, Konkret Musik, further, maybe next
Thank
year.
You so much. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. All the best for for the release of Konkret Musik. That's so weird because it sounds like it's almost German, like.
yeah, but we have a lot in common in terms of language, I think.
And of course, it reminded me of the Musik Konkret, which was a movement at the beginning of the last century with a lot of tape recordings and stuff.
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons why of the name. Really, it's a play with words. So there is some inspiration from that movement in this album as well.
I thought so. All right, all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the Progcast. Thank you to our listeners for listening. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and listen to Konkret Musik.
The Progcast is a production of Stuus Media and is recorded at the Moonbase Studios in Munich. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stengel-Lewis, Blake Lewis, Kai Metzner, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant.